Welcome everybody to the SYBK Hockey Show. I'm the commish, and first off, I'd like to apologize for not having any lengthy recaps in the past couple of weeks. Things got busy in the office here. We've been scouting a few players abroad, traveling a bit, and haven't been able to recap the last couple of weeks as many of you have expected and have enjoyed how we have done in the past. So um, tonight I am going to recap the last couple of weeks, give a little bit of a mid-season report, where we stand as a league, and shout out to going forward. Um, okay, I'm gonna start going back a couple of weeks as to week 4. Um, actually, I'll start off here. Currently, the standings look as the after last night. After week 6, we got the Knights sitting at 2-4, the Coyotes sitting at 2-3-1, Wild 3-3. So really a cluster, and all those three teams are really have 2 points, about 2 points separating them between second and last place. And then the Oilers, who did lose last night, are sitting at 5-1. And if any of those teams that are in the middle of the pack can make a solid push, definitely it's not an outreach because the Wild are only 4 points behind. So I'm going to go back to week 4. We had the Oilers beat the Wild that week. They beat them 7-4, and after the game was tied up at 4-4 all going into the third, the Oilers were able to come out, score 3 goals in the third, and 2 late goals, and at that point they moved on to a record of 4-0 as they won 7-4, which brings us to interesting because the Oilers play the Wild this week, in which is a very big showdown for the Wild, because a win there would only put them 2 points out of first place and really have them in a good position and make a really tight push to possibly end off the season in the number 1 seed. Also in week 4, it was Coyotes versus the Knights, and this was probably the biggest seesaw battle of the year that we've seen. One of the craziest games we've seen in SYBK hockey. A total of 21 goals scored. Then the Knights were playing. Oh, I'm sorry. The Coyotes were playing with triple backup goalie Michaels, who for a 17-year-old kid was pretty decent. Coming into the big show, and the Knights were actually, I'm sorry, the Coyotes at that point were actually down 7-2 in the third period at one time. Everybody thought this game was over. I don't know what happened, but the Knights had Stephen Bader replacing him. I think he had incurred some sort of an injury, but the Coyotes actually lit up the scoreboard, scoring 8 unanswered goals, going up with a 10-8 lead with about 3 minutes left in the game. And then after that, it was Arya Bortz for the Knights who was able to score. Jeffrey scored one, and then Arya scored the next goal to make it 10-all, forcing overtime. And then Arya scored the winning goal in overtime to win the game 11-10. It was probably the biggest heartbreaking loss for the Coyotes after coming back from such a huge deficit. But they were able to pull through, and they were able to grow from that. Hopefully that was a growing experience, because they did have a couple of impressive wins moving forward from week 4. Week 5, we had the Oilers beat the Knights 5-2. The Knights that week were short a couple of players. Bortz didn't show up that week, and they still played a very, very tight game without their number 1 scorer. It was 3-2 going into the third period. Really tight checking game, and the Oilers ended up being able to pull away with about 3 minutes left, scoring 4-2, and then netting, maybe it was an empty netter to push the score to finish the game with a victory of 5-2. But that was a really tight game. And then the second game 2 weeks ago, the Wild did beat the Coyote. They beat the Coyotes 5-1, putting up a stellar offensive and defensive performance. Not really bending and giving much to the Coyotes, and winning the game 5-1, which set up for a very interesting week 6. Going into the week, the Oilers were sitting at 5-0, playing the Coyotes, who at this point were 1-3-1 and were in desperate need for a win. What's been? Let me just talk. Actually, let me give you a quick recap there first. The game was, if I'm not mistaken, it was about 3-3 going into the third period, and or maybe it was 4-4. There's 4 in the third, but then the Coyotes were able to take advantage of the Oilers' short bench and were able to execute on several 2-on-1s to score 2 goals, and then were able to cash in on 2 slap shots by Ben Valinsky from the point. Truly 2 lasers. Shout out to Ben for his big shots there, and to secure an 8-4 victory over the Oilers to hand the Oilers their first loss of the season. And it was a big win for the Coyotes, because it finished the night with them with 5 points and sitting in third place. But they still do have a lot of room to improve on, and I'll get to that in a minute. Then in the second game last night, the Knights, who again were shorthanded in terms of player personnel, Bort's missing his second game of the week, Jeffrey Towell not there, and several other key components of their offense were not there. Phil Dweck had to call in some subs, and the game was a really tight game, 3-3 going into the third. The Wild, who were also missing some players, but were a little bit deeper than the Knights. Tight seesaw battle back and forth, 3-3. Then the Knights were able to put one past the Wild were able to put one past Morris Bailey late in the third to take a 4-3 lead. And I think with the Knights' short bench, they really ran out of gas and weren't able to put much pressure on in the third period, and came up with a tough loss. And now they are sitting at 2-4. So I'd like to give now a mid-season report, my thought on all 4 teams and what I think things are going on. So I'll start from the top, and I'm going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers. Yes, I'm part of that team, and yes, I did hear a couple of league members complaining. Some people thinking, oh, this team's too stacked, oh, this team's too good. First, let me stop that right there. Going into the season, I think the Oilers didn't have one of the deepest teams. Not only that, all 4 of the captains agreed on all of the teams being fair, and all 4 captains were very happy with the teams that they had. I think the Oilers have been the only team through 5 weeks, excluding last week, that have been able to show up with all of their players for the first 5 weeks, meaning they were able to roll 2 lines, offensively and defensively. The goalie has showed up every week in and week out, so they did not have to find a backup goalie. And they were able to rotate the lines and create a chemistry amongst themselves and amongst the players, which I think is a very, very key component. We saw how that breaks down, because this week the Oilers' entire second line did not show up. Everybody, for various reasons, and I understand. Sometimes Sunday night, some guys have a wedding, traveling, taking their kids to the Islanders game, whatever it is. You're not going to have 100% attendance throughout 10 weeks of the season. I understand that. But the team that can attend the game more often than not will be the team that's more successful. And with the short bench last night, the Oilers were able to hang into the game, probably through the third period, but when rotating only 2 guys on the bench, they got beat. And this has happened to every single team so far this season. It happened to the Wild, it happened to the Knights, and it also happened to the Coyotes. So when everybody's saying, oh, the Oilers were ahead above everybody, I don't think so. I just think the other teams didn't have full benches and weren't able to put the best foot forward playing the Oilers. That being said, let me talk about the Oilers team. Listen, when you have a team with Aaron Harari, there is always going to be they're always going to be a threat. But the Oilers, I think, from Aaron Harari's leadership and his guidance, he wants the Oilers to roll 2 lines of defense. We've pointed out that the Oilers' D might be a little bit weak in the beginning of the season, but the fact that they're being able to roll four lines, which is E.G., myself, Little Aaron, and Abe Silvers, he's able to keep his defensemen fresh at all times, and being able to be a fresh defenseman is a lot better than being rolling three and being a little bit tired in the third period and making a bad play. So I think being able to roll four, which not a lot of teams are doing, and we haven't seen it in the past on successful teams, it's creating a little bit more depth for the Oilers as they rotate two lines up front. And I think that's what has led to their success. Keep in mind, Ray T has been playing fantastic between the pipes, and he's been giving his team a chance to stay in it, especially like nights like last night when they all didn't show up. He was able to keep the game really tight towards the end, and maybe with 6-7 minutes left in the game, it just got out of hand because everybody got a little bit tired. But I think attendance is very important, and the Oilers are the only team that through 6 games have been able to stay with a full attendance maybe 90% of the time, and I think that's probably the biggest key as to why they are sitting atop of the standings at 5-1. Next, I'd like to talk about the Minnesota Wild, who are 3-3, a surprising 3-3, and I think that is the case because yes, everybody saw the names on this team, high-profile players: Mo Mallow, Bijou, Walensky, Richie Bailey, David Cabasso. The list goes on. But were these guys going to be able to mesh? And a couple of nights, again, going back to attendance, they haven't showed up, played with shorthanded, and has led to several of their losses. But nights when they're able to play all in unison and as an entire team, these guys are very, very hard to stop. The line of Walensky and Bijou, these guys got tons of chemistry. So last night they were scoring highlight reel goals. I wish we had them on video because they're really amazing goals. But now they're on a 2-game win streak, beating the Coyotes 2 weeks ago 5-1, beating the Knights last night 4-3, and now they have a big game this week going up against the Oilers, a statement game. If they can win that game and just be 2 points out of first place, you never know. These Minnesota Wild might be able to make a push for the number 1 seed. Big question mark on this team is Steven Beta. He's been hurt the last 2 weeks. When he comes back, will he be healthy? Can he come back and play to the level that these guys really need him to play at and be as reliable as he has been in the past? Because I think moving forward and into the playoffs, their success is going to be relying on him. And, he showed, obviously, in the past, won championships and been able to take a team to the promised land. But now health has become a big concern. So what will the Minnesota Wild do if Steven Beta isn't healthy when it comes to playoff time? I think Richie Bailey is doing a fantastic job leading these guys, and now if he can just get them all to show up at the same night, you never know, they might be able to pull together a 3-game win streak and make a push for the number 1 seed. Next, I'd like to talk about the Coyotes. The Coyotes are sitting at now 2-3-1 with 5 points. I mentioned earlier a week 4 heartbreaking loss when they had a triple backup Michaels in net for them after having a 10-8 lead and squandering the lead, losing 11-10 in overtime. That was a tough loss for them. But they were able to bounce back in week 6 and put a very, very strong performance against the 5-0 Oilers and winning 8-4. But again, the Oilers, 3 of their losses have come when they haven't been a full team. Week 1, they played without Isaac. When they lost 11-10 to the Knights, J-Ho wasn't there. And also last week against the Wild, they were also shorthanded. Although this week they did win a game where they were shorthanded, so I don't know how that works. But again, if this team shows up with its full depth, I think they're very deep. The line the possibility of a line of J Ho, Aaron Cabasso, and